Wait, how much do you think I could get on the market for selling that jewel bird? Hey everyone, this is Rabbit Small Animation Bliss, and welcome to my underrated and obscure cartoons corner. So today's underrated cartoon we talk about today is the 1987 cartoon, The Nightingale. And before I get into my thoughts about this cartoon, here are a few words from the channel. Alright Animaniacs, now let's get on the social media train. Want to chat with us in 100 words or less? Then check out our Twitter account. Want to chat with us within a group? Then check out our Facebook account. Want to get the lowdown on everything dealing with animation on this channel? Then check all of the above. And now, we return to our regularly scheduled program. So The Nightingale is basically an adaptation of the famous Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. And it starts up with the Emperor of China realizing that the Nightingale exists in his kingdom, and yet he hasn't heard about the Nightingale before. So he asks his advisor Wen Jin to find the Nightingale for him so he could hear the Nightingale song. And Wen Jin goes around the palace trying to find out who knows about the Nightingale, and he ends up meeting this poor kitchen maid named Mei Ying. And Mei Ying ends up telling Wen Jin about the Nightingale, and so she ends up taking Wen Jin to see the Nightingale, but Wen Jin ends up kidnapping the Nightingale and taking it to the Emperor himself. And at first the Nightingale wouldn't sing because it was trapped in the cage, but then Mei Ying comes in and helps the Nightingale start singing towards the Emperor, and the Emperor was so moved by the Nightingale's song that he ends up keeping the Nightingale in his palace. One day, however, Wen Jin ends up getting a plan where he brings the Emperor a jewel bird, and the jewel bird ends up becoming a hit at the palace. But unfortunately, this causes the real Nightingale to be banished from the palace, and Mei Ying ends up being demoted back to kitchen maid. But one tragic day, however, the Emperor ends up getting very ill, and the court believed that the Emperor was going to die, so of course they left the palace, and Wen Jin thinks that this was an opportunity for him to become the new Emperor, and so the Emperor is confronted with death, and then you have to see the rest of the special to see what happens next. Now, I actually grew up watching this cartoon when I was little, so I do have a nostalgia factor when it comes to this particular cartoon. It's one of those cartoons that a lot of people never talked about, which is a shame because it features the late Christopher Plummer being the narrator of this particular animated short, and I want to talk about some of the things I did like about this short. So first off, I like the fact that it was based off of one of my favorite fairy tales. I've always loved the original fairy tale, The Emperor and the Nightingale, and I love how in that story the Emperor tries to learn about what true beauty is all about when he starts preferring the jewel bird over the real Nightingale. And it was just such a cute little story about trying to learn about the importance of true beauty. And this particular special does just that, where we get to see how the Emperor is trying to learn about the importance of true beauty when he's listening to both the real Nightingale and the jewel bird itself. So I do like the fact that this particular special was able to tackle that issue that the original fairy tale had. And what made this cartoon stand out from all the other adaptations of The Emperor and the Nightingale is that we actually have an antagonist in the story. So in the original fairy tale, there was actually no real antagonist. The real conflict of the story was the Emperor trying to learn the real meaning of true beauty. And maybe the closest antagonist we do have in the original story was Death himself coming in to take the Emperor away. But the fact that this particular version of The Emperor and the Nightingale actually introduces an antagonist in the form of Wen Jin was really interesting to me. Like, I will admit that Wen Jin doesn't bring much to the story. Like, he's just another villain who wants to rule the kingdom once the Emperor was dead. But I did find his confrontations with Mei Ying to be very interesting. Like, he seems to have a lot going against Mei Ying. And in this version of The Emperor and the Nightingale, it seems like the main characters of this particular short are Mei Ying, the kitchen maid, and Wen Jin, the big bad, rather than the Emperor himself. And I do like the fact that we get to see this antagonistic relationship between the two of them. And another thing I really liked about this particular cartoon was that the kitchen maid herself actually gets a bigger role in this cartoon. Like in the original fairy tale, while it was the kitchen maid who was the one who led the court to the Nightingale, in this version we actually get the kitchen maid to have a bigger role. Like, we get to see how things play out from her point of view, and we get to see her relationship with the Nightingale. And I enjoy seeing that aspect of Mei Ying's character, seeing how she has a much more expanded role in this particular version of the Nightingale, which I really enjoyed. So I do like the fact that this particular cartoon does add a bit more depth to each character than the original fairy tale did. And I do like Christopher Plummer narrate the story. He does such a fantastic job at narrating this story, as he has a very wise sounding voice throughout the entire cartoon. And it makes me miss him a lot more, since he was the narrator for the original Madeline cartoons in the 1990s. Now, if there was an issue that I have with this particular cartoon, is that the animation can get a bit stiff at times, and this was something that happens very commonly in a lot of 1980s cartoons. This particular cartoon came out in 1987, so of course the animation looks a bit more stiff compared to later animations, so there was the issue with that. But the animation for the most part is pretty fluid. Like, there were some moments where the characters' hands are like moving in a very fluid way, and I do like how the facial expressions are done. So even though there was some stiff animation in the special here and there, it was still a very good fluid animation for the most part. So overall, I really enjoyed the Nightingale. Even though some of the animation in this cartoon was a bit stiff, I did like the fact that this story had a different take on the original fairy tale, The Emperor and the Nightingale, by making the kitchen maid more like a main character than in the original tale. And I do like the addition of the big bad and Wen Jin, as he added something pretty interesting to this adaptation of the fairy tale. And I definitely recommend you check out the Nightingale if you're a huge fan of the original fairy tale, The Emperor and the Nightingale. So that's my review on the Nightingale, and tell me in the comments down below, have you seen the Nightingale? And if you have, did you like this cartoon? Did you hate this cartoon? And what were some underrated animated adaptations of your favorite fairy tales that you think everyone should see? Please feel free to tell me in the comments down below. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Rabbit's Blog Animation Bliss, and I'll see you guys later.